So in this video, we're going to look at the important problem of systemic risk. And this is really when one firm or one part of the financial system collapses and has problems, it affects the whole system. So the whole market or the whole financial system may break down or collapse. So this is serious. This has become a particular problem, or people are aware of this problem rather, since 2008. So an example of a systemic risk is when American International Group, a huge insurance company, failed. This posed a risk to the whole insurance market. And of course this can happen globally. So one aspect of systemic risk might be when one firm becomes too big. If a firm becomes too big, and if it collapses or gets into difficulties, it'll affect a multitude of firms. So it's like a domino effect. So one big firm collapses and knocks all the other dominoes over because they're all interconnected. So if the firm is too big to fail, it will affect the whole market. And it's defined really as when one firm's failure will be disastrous to the whole economic system and have severe adverse consequences. There's some discussion about whether this is the real nub of the problem to do with systemic risk between economists. So Alan Greenspan, one time a revered central banker, as he ran the Federal Reserve and presided over a long period of growth until 2008. And he said, quite an obvious thing, if they are too big to fail, they're too big. So his point will be you need to take action on too big to fail. However, Paul Krugman, well-known Keynesian economist and Nobel Prize winner, he disagrees, and he says it's not necessarily the size of the problem, it's the level of regulation. And he cites the example of the 1930s, where there were many, many, many small banks and not regulated that tightly in terms of the activities that took place. And of course that caused an enormous recession in the interwar period. So Krugman says there's a real problem of regulation, such as the amount of capital deposits or that a bank would need. Okay, that's too big to fail. And to develop this further, Ben Bernanke, also a Federal Reserve chair, a governor of the Federal Reserve, argued that too big to fail results in, number one, moral hazard, number two, reduces the level of competition in the market, of course, and number three, when Lehman Brothers collapsed, it significantly worsened the crisis because it resulted in lower credit flows throughout the system. So that's banks borrowing from each other on a short-term basis. See the video on that. It also fell a big collapse in asset prices and therefore big fall in confidence. And therefore that's another example of a bank that was too big to fail. A massively leveraged bank, Lehman Brothers, with a huge amount of borrowing. So that's one aspect. Another aspect of systemic risk is maybe if firms are too connected to fail. So if firms or banks have a lot of loans between each other, they're more interconnected, and therefore if one fails, the other's likely to fail. So if we think of dominoes, if you have a domino that's too big, it's more likely to knock all the others over and cause systemic risk. And to continue the analogy, if dominoes are placed further apart, then if one collapses, the whole lot are less likely to collapse, and that means they're less connected and therefore less likely to pose a problem, a systemic risk. So monitoring the financial system and regulating it is a tricky process. It's a bit like running a nuclear reactor. You need to keep going smoothly without blowing up and without crashing. And so economists have become increasingly aware of systemic risk. Thank you for watching.